You ever see the movie Gremlins, right? So when like these cute little fuzzy things, when they just had a little drop of water, they turned into these little like demons. That was sort of for me, like as a pastor in 2020, that was just like, it was like watching this, like what on earth is going on here? Like normal level-headed people just like, erupting into, something from the movie Alien. This is one of my just pastoral reflections from 2020 is that there was a whole lot of, just a whole lot of non-Christ-like stuff going on. Like even biblical, there are things that I just like, I would hear being said, and I just thought, I don't know about that. And I would see things being put on, social media, and I go, I don't actually would send them a private message and go, yeah, I don't think that verse works that way. I'd see other things, and I, again, would send a little private message and say, yeah, I don't think that's that actually right perspective to have, because that's not biblical. And actually, what I really just kind of boil it down to, it's like, the least common denominator, right? It's actually just being a jerk. Like this is just what I like. This was my observation, is that just people like good-hearted, kind, level-headed Christians, like at some point in the midst of 2020, they just like became gremlins. You ever see Gremlins? You ever see the movie Gremlins, right? So when like these cute little fuzzy things, when they just had a little drop of water, they turned into these little like demons. That was sort of for me, like as a pastor in 2020, that was just like, it was like watching this, like what on earth is going on here? Like normal level-headed people just like, erupting into, something from the movie Alien. And it just like, if I could just boil it down to like let's just name the behavior. It's like, you know what? You gave up Christ for being a jerk. That's just my honest truth-telling assessment. Like you gave up all of the goodness of Jesus Christ in your life to be put on display for the rest of the world, so that the rest of the world, who is under the power of the spiritual forces in this world, you actually gave up all of Christ to be under that influence and just be a jerk like everybody else. Come on. So much of what the Bible really says, or tells us about loving our neighbor, was just set aside to win an argument. And that is becoming corrupted again by the influences of this world. Those powers of darkness that are influencing culture to only care about the things of the world. The church was becoming under that influence. They were going out from under the influence of the king and the kingdom to becoming under the influence of the rest of the world. It's going to a lesser system. Okay. You got that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. It's a few things. The next couple of weeks, I'm going to talk about some things, and this is a very practical side of this message. Okay. The first behavior, let's just say they're jerk moves, right? You guys know what a jerk move, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic. You go, come on, jerk move, man. From a pastoral's perspective, these were the jerk moves, and I'm gonna tell you why we shouldn't do them and what's wrong with them. Okay, the first thing, okay? Your neighbor who lives across the street from you that has a different political sign in their yard, they are not part of the devil's army, okay? Yeah, we laugh, but like this was the thing. Like this is what people were saying in 2020 is that those others, that other political party, are demons. Is what they're saying. That's essentially what they said. That and there's many different ways to say that, but if you could boil it down to a statement, is that there was this belief that any political opposition to your party was a result of direct devilish behavior. And it's sort of comical to think like this is like they're just being in the kind of flew out this way, like they're just being used by the devil, this is the spawns of Satan have overtaken the opposing political force, and I just like first of all want to ask, like, does your neighbor engage in devil worship? Like, have you ever like noticed like them taking goats into their backyard and the goats never coming out? Like, is there evidence of animal sacrifice, happening, and it's like there are candle trucks showing up to? No, there's not stuff's not happening. But all of a sudden, it's like in this moment, one of the things that happens is you look at people who don't agree with you as the enemy, and then what happens is you spiritualize this. And that's so dangerous, because here's the truth. Our neighbor is not our enemy. And if they were our enemy, you know what the Bible actually says to do? Yeah, love thy enemy. Pray for them who persecute you, right? So even if they were, like, calling them the devil is not the thing to do. Calling them demonized is not the thing to do. Like, that's not the thing. And if you, first of all, if you turn the page to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, what does it say? Some of you are doing it. Thank you. We battle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and the powers and the principalities of this present darkness. So even if my enemy or my neighbor is different from me politically, my war is not with them. My war is against the powers and the principalities of this present darkness that Paul talked about in Ephesians chapter 3. And how do I engage in warfare with that group? By sending them the message that I'm under the manifold wisdom of God. I'm not living according to the ways of this world where I'm going to step outside and start throwing stones across the street to my neighbor. I'm going to, though they disagree with me, I'm still going to show them love. The problem may be, and this is, if you go to Matthew chapter 16, the problem may actually be in the light of what was happening there, where Jesus talks about his going to Jerusalem to die, and Peter is like, no, and he rebukes Jesus, and Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. And then he says, Peter, your mind is on the things of this world rather than on the things of God. Right? So the satanic influence in that scene in Matthew is that Peter had his mind on the things of this world rather than on the things of God. And so one of the things that we got to kind of reconcile as believers is that if we view our neighbors as like, wow, they're under the powers of the rulers of this world, what does that mean? It means that they're just thinking about the things of this world rather than the things of God. And how do we engage in bringing them about into the kingdom? By showing them the ways of God. through love, mercy, compassion. Okay, so the demonization of our political opponents, jerk move. Number 2, fear-based and fear-generating rhetoric. The political powers that are, they exist because they're very good at making people afraid, aren't they? They have told you that, well, if so and so happens to get into office, then you're gonna lose X, Y, and Z. That's the like if you want to win in the political arena, that is the recipe for winning. It's been being played for, in our nation for 220 some odd years. It goes back to the beginning. This is just part of our national narrative. Like we're just like every party is like they're just like they step up to the platform and they have a fear-based message. And that's like one of the things that I listen to is like, wait a minute, like as Christians, like I don't, first of all, practically, in my 40 plus years on this planet, everything that they said was going to happen because of right? Or fill in the blank, actually really never manifested. I mean, that's like, I just go, yeah, okay. So you're trying to bait me into believing your message because I have something to lose, or I'm fearing something is going to happen. I don't think that's the right kingdom perspective. I don't want to do something unless like there's healthy fear, right? Like so if I'm standing on a railroad track and a train is coming, I ought to be afraid of the train and move off the track, right? But if I'm standing on the train track and there's no train coming and you're trying to convince me to be afraid of the train and to run for my life and be hysterical, that's nonsense, right? And that's the thing. Like there's a visible train and oftentimes there's an invisible train. And we need to recognize, okay, what's the right response in this moment in time? Are you just trying to motivate the mob because of fear or through fear, or what? The other thing is that, and this is what I noticed, that fear-based rhetoric or fear generating, some of the rhetoric in the last election season, it caused people in minority groups to fear for their life. And that's like, as believers, again, if I'm asking myself the question, was my behavior and my speech and my rhetoric and my discourse, was it Christ-like? If my discourse has caused people in minority groups to be afraid, how to change what I say? How to change how I say that, or how to just not say it at all? And that's like, we got to think about how our words are impacting the people around us in our communities. Because there are people that are, and there are people who live on my street that fit into these minority groups. And I can tell you, I can assure you, because I have open lines of communication with my neighbors. I can assure you that the language and the rhetoric that was coming out of the political scene caused and generated fear for them, to worry for their life. And one of the things that I just don't want to do is with my neighbors, I don't want my political slogans and political speech and to actually have to cause them to be to fear me. I just don't want that. And so, and I'm not saying like anybody, like you did that knowingly. I think it was an unintended consequence. I just do. And I think some of the things that we have to do in order to maintain our Christ-likeness is to consider, again, we have to really think deeply about how we do this, so that the things that we do, we kind of can see that, wow, this may have an unintended consequence of this. And it may come across as being unchristlike. It may. It may not. Maybe harmless. But I think for us it's worth considering. But I know that as I look back on the 2020, it happened. There was an unintended consequence. As a pastor, I spoke with many people who are people of color, and they just go, I'm afraid for my life right now. I'm sorry. I'm with you. And I can assure you, like, if you're here today and you're kind of feeling like, oh man, I don't want to go through this again because of that, I'm with you. I don't want you to have to go through that again. Really don't. The last thing, as I'll end on this is real short, is that overall there's just really in 2020 there was a lack of humility in our dialogue, in our Facebook, back and forth, I don't know why we think we're going to convince somebody who disagrees with us on Facebook. You're not going to do that, okay? But I can say this, that when your pastor, who 90% of your life, you go, yeah, you know what, I trust that guy in spiritual endeavors. I trust that guy in spiritual matters. When he goes, hey, I don't think that's a good interpretation of that passage of Scripture. The person that you trust 90% of the time on matters of Scripture, when you dismiss them, that is a non-humble response, especially when you call them demonized. Okay, and I got called demonized more than several times, probably over 10. That was just like, oh, you have a political demon. That's what people told me. I said, no, I know how to read Scripture, and I'm just telling you, that's not a good reading of Scripture. And I'm not trying to be proud or arrogant, but if there's somebody that knows more about. Sometimes I talk about physics and science and computers, and I know that you guys are all geniuses in those areas. And if somebody who knew more about one of those arenas comes up to me and say, actually, you had that thing a little backwards, and offered me a suggestion or a fix or yet even more insight into, I would be appreciative. I would say, wow, thank you. But in the matter of politics, one of the things that happens is we just we think, oh, I know more than people who actually spend time studying this. I don't need to, I'll take his advice about, getting to heaven, but you know what? Winning an election, let's not do that. Or how to engage in politics in a way that's faithful to Christ, also, without, being a jerk. And you go, yeah, I'm not going to trust him in those areas, but I'll trust him in getting to heaven. And that's the thing. But that translates not only into from that scenario where I may offer you hey, here's some further insight to consider. That translates into how we talk with one another. Are we, in our speech and in our language, lifting up other people above ourselves rather than just trying to dominate the conversation? And that's listening, or speaking before listening, I think it's just a general jerk move. I think those are the things that we ought to just, hey, let's as we go through this year, let's just remember these three things. My neighbor, not the devil, right? Let's consider the whole community in our rhetoric, in our discourse. And the third, let's just approach each other with love, respect, and humility.